Filmmaking has always been about the story to me. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't know the story, you have no business making the film. Too many people try to jump the horse and try to get a little too ahead of themselves, and you end up with a product that looks kind of sloppy. Recently, my wife and I, she's my producing partner, and believe it or not, for someone who had no experience in the film industry prior to her meeting me, she's one of the best partners I've ever had. And so breaking the story is one of those moments and times where you take the opportunity to really explore what's possible, but you kind of beat the thing up. So her and I were sitting down, we're having tea, she's instituted tea times, and we were having tea, and while we were talking, it came up that they were thinking about doing a Twister sequel. I think they still are. I think they started principal photography in May, but then because of the writer's strike or whatever else, they had to shut down production. So we were talking, well, what would make a good sequel? And most of the time, Hollywood learns the wrong lessons from certain things, and so we were exploring, well, what would it look like? Clearly, the cast is, most of the cast is gone. I think the most you have is Helen Hunt. I mean, obviously that's not true. You've got a lot of the other characters, Tom Field, Alan Ruck, and whatnot, and some of the others. But for instance, like, Lois Smith and whatnot is a little old. So what we said was, okay, let's take the concept of what was the original Twister. The original Twister was based about Bill Paxton, who used to be a tornado chaser, and what he ended up doing was he left to become a weather person and whatever else, and the entire story is about someone finding who they are and coming back to themselves amidst this action-packed disaster film. And of course, there's the romance and some other subplots and things like that. Things that most times Hollywood doesn't even spend much time doing today. I said, first off, it's gotta be their kid. Then I said, you need 2 kids because I want some conflict. Now, there's probably going to be conflict from everything else. Remember, in the first movie, they did their job was to get the Daisy or whatever that thing was into the air to get all the data, and they did that, and they gave that technology and all that information to the world for free. So now we're living in a post that experience world. What does that look like? Clearly, the idea for me was that, okay, you take the concept of their kids. They are living the life that their mother, who would be played by Helen Hunt still, and the idea is that they live in the house of their friend Meg. Meg was the house that got wrecked by the Twister the first time around. They live in that house, and they've like whatever, double, triple mortgaged, whatever the heck. So that's a point of tension. The more points of tension you add, the better. And you want to give nods to the original without actually repeating the same lessons, because at the end of the day, you want this to feel like an original new chapter, if you will, in that particular thing. So the concept was, you take the kids, you have 2 of them, a boy and a girl. The boy is very much gung-ho and living in that moment of who they are and what they can do, and they have a new idea. You can suss that out later in the writer's room. So then you take the concept of the daughter and you say, okay, she's being wooed by another company. I don't know if you remember the Carrie Eves character he had all the slick SUVs and all the RVs and all that stuff. So you say, okay, that style of company is trying to approach the daughter of Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt's daughter. But she's trying to keep it hush-hush. The son is very much about the life they've been living and whatnot. And so, because the focal character is gonna end up being, the first movie was Bill Paxton's redemptive arc. This movie would be the daughter's redemptive arc, meaning who she eventually becomes. Now you have to also up the stakes, but you don't want to go crazy. You don't want this to become Sharknado or something ridiculous or a joke of itself. Twister set the standard for disaster films at the time. So you have a big legacy to live up to. So the point, what do? Do it bigger. Why? Because if you remember in the first movie, the Twisters, the tornadoes, weren't that big of a thing. By that I mean, they were there, obviously, but the main story was the people involved. So same thing, you relegate the weather stuff to the background. So what you end up with is this idea that there seems to be a perfect storm. You lean heavy into You lean heavy into climate change, which is a big point of topic and whatnot, and you lean into that as a storytelling point. And you simply point out that as a result of whatever's happening, and you can point out things in the news and get science consultants to help you sort of pick and choose the moments and things that help tell the story better. But the idea is that there seems to be a series of storms that all seem to be building to the largest, wildest tornado season ever on record. And that they're gonna build into something bigger that could be the next big category up. Whatever the current category scale is, potentially we're looking at a storm bigger and bigger, because that's what they did in the first movie. That's the only point that you want to repeat. Meanwhile, so the entire thing is that entire story. You get as many of the old actors there as possible, and at some point or another, you literally have the kids, their kids. So you get, Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid, you get the kid of his character he played, all these people. So you have a group that's roughly the size of the children who've grown up in this lifestyle. Then you have the old school parents. Something happens at the turning point. The turning point in a script is when a big climactic, but it's not the climax, it's a climactic thing that shakes everything up, shakes up the status quo. And that at 2/3 through the film, what it's gonna end up being is something major happens, the opportunities and the things they had are destroyed because of the storm, whatever else. Homegirl's being offered opportunity to go off with this company and this corporation to go do something, and she goes. Again, you have to have her redemptive arc to get her back. So she goes. The next point, and this is one my wife came up with, you want that nostalgia. So what you do is, they're at the house, the old house, Meg's house, there's a barn in the back. There wasn't in the first movie, who cares? There's one now. And so, and she got all the wind chimes and everything else, and Helen Hunt is essentially playing the Meg character in this, meaning the older person who's sort of there to relate to at that stage. And what happens is you get the kids who are like, they don't want to listen to nothing, and they're like, look, there's a way to do this. And they open the barn and you get this real Ghostbusters Afterlife type moment. They throw back the tarp, and it's the old RV, the old Winnebago style RV they had in the first movie. Obviously you recreate the thing. It's all covered in dust, but it's got all their old tech, radios and the whole bit, and old stuff from the 90s. The point is now the old dogs have to teach the new kids all their, like, here's how we did it back in our day. But the new kids have a little bit that they can add to it. And again, this is bringing two generations together, the next chapter, in this series that could eventually become something else bigger if you wanted to. And you get that moment where where the daughter's faced with them both this and that, but rather than taking the same, you get her to have the same choice. The same choice. And you have Helen Hunt listening on the radio because she's too old to be going along with them, but she's listening still on their lines, and so she's very much aware that, and it almost should be the exact same moment. The thing's gonna turn. The son who gets an instinct or whatever, and she literally, matter of fact, no, even better, you flip it. The daughter's the one who's got that Bill Paxton-y prescience. She understands how to read the storm. She, with her nice shiny black SUV, black RV crew from the corporate people, and she sees the thing's gonna turn. And she's being told, don't tell them anything. But that's her family. That's their whole life. And so what does she do? She warns them. And as a result of warning them, she gets kicked off the thing, loses that opportunity. That's for her the moment. She's now on foot, and she's gotta make it to them. So what happens, so now you have her in physical peril, you have them over there, she managed to warn them, they don't know who's coming, they don't know if they should trust her or not, whatever, but at the end of the day, that's when Helen Hunt realizes that she's trying to trust. Helen Hunt should go back out in the storm to try to save her. She's like, I'm coming, and she goes in the car, but the idea is at some point or other, this storm does exactly the thing it's gonna do. It becomes this giant monster storm, whatever else. They do the thing and they achieve the thing they're trying to achieve. The big corporate guys lose out because they're morons, because what she didn't tell them wasn't just that it was going to turn toward them, but it was going on a different track than what she had told them. She noticed it at the last second, didn't say a word, because then she says to Helen Hunt, that'll be when you're riding in the car together, and it's very Helen Hunt mirroring this thing, and she says essentially, hey, I don't, she tells her, she's like, the storm's going to turn again. She's like, they don't know. And so this whole thing, so again, it culminates in the thing it culminates into and becomes this whole whatever. And at the very end, you get this really wonderful moment where everybody there, the house is being foreclosed on. Everything looks like it's over. Yes, they won the day doing technically the thing they were trying to do, but then you have a white hat, if you will, shiny white SUV and a shiny white RV, very contrasty to the black hat type bad corporations. And it's this philanthropic nature company who you find out was started by one of them. It's the guy who, he's one of the other original people. It could literally be Alan Ruck's character, somebody else who went on to do some stuff, do good philanthropic work. And ultimately that, or it's somebody we don't know who remembers and says, hey, your dad helped me once, he was a great blah, blah, blah. It can be something that happened off page, something that happened between the lines, and ultimately leads us to this end result, which is this beautiful moment where they are gonna take help from corporate America, but it's the right kind. It's philanthropic, nature-loving kind and whatnot. And now you see there's a possibility of future stories, and I think it's a really good, it was a great opportunity we broke the story we weren't even hired to write. Why? Because that's what you do when you're creative. You sit around just writing stuff and coming up with ideas and stuff. So those are the kinds of things that I try to help with when I do my writing consultating, or we call our script sculpt sessions, which is where we sit there and we help you sculpt your thing and whatnot. We just do this back and forth. If it's the writer's room type experience, then several of the writers I've worked with and who were in my previous writer's room that I put together, we go on the Zoom and we talk through the thing. It's exciting. It's really exciting. I enjoy every possibility. And I'm doing a free webinar. It's called The Realities of Filmmaking, and it's sort of a way to give an introduction to people about who I am. So hopefully take the opportunity, register at the description. There's a description, there will be a description at the bottom of this video, and take the opportunity to, if nothing else, hear what I have to say. The initial, this webinar is free, and hopefully I start to tell you more about the story and how I do some things, and we can hopefully work together, and I can help you avoid the pitfalls that I've faced. So yeah, that's how you break a story. When it comes to, you sit around, you beat that concept up, but you want to come up with as many interesting points of order when it comes to the story you're trying to tell, especially if it's something that's derivative or something that's a sequel of some sort. So yeah,